Hello, world. Little Frida Reba Darcy and Patricia O'Connor here. Look at this day. Today, a little thought about time. Tiempo. What time is it? Does Pat know what time it is? It's a good time for some things. It's not the best time for some other things. One way of looking at time is to say that it is, I believe, about January 15th. Another way to look at it would be to say that it's midwinter. For most of us, it would be we're right slap dab in the middle of winter, and where our trees do show it to be, they do seem to be bare. They also show other things. They also show times are quickly changing. We've got buds showing on some of our trees. They're starting to wake up a little bit. So, in that sense of the word, I did a little bit of zip tie prying on sweet pea the other night when y'all saw me pull back two branches, but those branches were being pulled back to positions that they had been in before with wire, and they had relaxed themselves, and I just kind of cinched them back. What I'm actually kind of getting at is that probably would not have otherwise been the best time to go bending on pines. If I had some tricky kind of come back tight on yourself kind of maneuver where you're going to put a lot of stress. I'm kind of showing you my elbow like that was the corner of a bend I was making. This wouldn't be necessarily the time for that. All the stuff is moving a little slower in our trees right now, and so that is more likely to be a time when you would break something or snap something off. So that's one thing to think about in the way of time. Also, it was about this time 3 years ago that I got reintroduced to bonsai. Haven't been interested in it as a kid. Growing up out in the big thicket of southeast Texas, I would dig up hollies and oaks, and I wasn't really that much into pines at the time because I realized the difference between the black pines that bonsai people were using and the loblollies that were our local species, and they never looked very bonsai to me. They were plentiful and they grew like weeds, and they looked like some kind of wild wig that people would wear in the 60s, or maybe these weird lights that people used to have that were fiber optic lamps that just had the weird sprigs. They look like that to me because all you see is really, really long loblolly. I mean, that just kind of says the word right there. Those needles were really long. But I would probably love a loblolly pine now and could do. They have great attributes to them. And since then, I've also learned to love long needle pines. But that's not considered, that's kind of getting off the track a little bit. What else is it a good time for? It's the beginning of the year is another way to think of this. And on this very day, I will start applying my systemic treatments to the trees. Those are done twice yearly. So if you're going to do something twice a year, you can pick any 2 days, I think, of the year and call it that. But sometime in January is a good time to do one. And then probably 6 months later, or let's see, January, February, March, April, May, June, would probably then be another time for the other. And I say one, but it's really two. You treat it, and then 2 weeks later, you go back over and do it again to make sure it got in there. And that's considered one treatment, and I do that twice a year. So January would be a good time to get that one in. Also, 3 years ago when I started this, it was about this time that you looked around and you didn't see a lot going on and everything was cold. And I was probably spending a lot of time on YouTube looking at bonsai trees that other people had in other people's gardens and trying to learn that way. This is a great time for that. This is a great time to double up on your bonsai lessons. The stuff that you learned maybe last year, that was you being a little bit outside your comfort zone and reaching a little bit. Maybe this would be a good time to go back and dig up those lessons and repeat those. For me, that means that today, before the day's over with, I will have watched Ryan Neal's. It's a free video. You can find it on YouTube, and it's about probably 8 or 9 years old at this point, where he's with a class. He's sitting in on a bonsai club or a class somewhere, and it is, I think it was in Ireland actually. Now that I think about it, it is bonsai pine tree maintenance part 1, which deals with 2 flush pines like black pines and red pines, and pine tree maintenance part 2, which deals with your single flush pines, your white pines, and that sort of thing. So today, being the first of the year, we are going to start our new year and our new pine tree maintenance, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch those lessons over again and make sure that I'm going in to the different, I want to go into the different seasons. Like right now, we are still feeding. This tree will probably get fed because it's kind of still in recuperation mode, so it'll probably get fed more, but regardless of needle size. This one, we still want it to do everything like we're supposed to, so we're still feeding it and probably will until maybe about April or so. Somewhere in the spring we need to back off that because it needs a few weeks. It's going to need a few weeks to run the fertilizer through the tree. That way, when we decandle it, I'm not decandling that one. That's the difference. When I decandle this one, it won't be freshly decandled and then full of nutrients for which to make new long second flush. We want it to make a smaller second flush, which is why we're doing that. So yeah, that's what's going on there. So in other words, I'm going to want to time my feedings. It's time to think about, it's still time to be feeding my pine trees. But I will be thinking about how long it'll take for those nutrients to run through. It's water soluble, and it'll probably take about 4 weeks. So when I want these guys to be to have all their nutrients run through them so that they won't produce good needles, will be about 4 weeks before I plan to do my needle pruning, which would be in June. So that would have me stop fertilizing, be fertilizing now if I'm not, but otherwise be ready to stop come May. So that's another thing in regards to time. Also, when that spring comes and everything is flushing out and you see all the little sprigs and all the flowers and all the new shoots popping up, maybe you're standing underneath a tree in your neighborhood that you really like, and you look down at your feet and you see all these little shoots popping up and you feel so inspired. I know my first year, my second year, and also my third year, I'm always inspired to dig up something out in the yard come spring, and that's the wrong time to do it. I have this one. That's the one I dug up last year. But if I were to still have all the trees that I've done that to, that tray would have about a dozen little oaks and our local maples, mountain maples in them. And almost all of those didn't make it. My success rate did go up a little bit when I started setting my mames and show hens on trays to where they can, on trays with substrate in them. That is a big help to those trees. But that is so the wrong time of year to take those. Time, again, and as far as time goes, this is the time to sow seeds and this would be the time to dig up those little dormant trees that are just about to start busting out. I mean, if the ground's not frozen where you are, this would be the time to take those. That time in the spring when you're so inspired to go get everything after it started budding out and looking all cool and stuff, that isn't the time to get it. The time to get it is now. So yeah, as far as timing is concerned, it's a great time to start your systemic treatments. It's a great time to dig in with a good cup of coffee or a cup of tea, as St. Tom would say, and stay warm and dry and watch your bonsai lessons, especially the stuff that maybe you learned before but were reaching on. It'd be a great time to just go ahead before you start your new year and your new cycle of needle pruning, candle pruning, needle plucking, as I meant to say, or repotting, or any of those things. It's a great time just to go through and redo our lessons. It's a great time to start our systemic treatment. Probably not the greatest time to go putting wire and putting some heavy hard bends in trees. Their stuff is still going to be a little slower and thicker, and you might actually be more likely to see a break in that. But yeah, so yeah, that as far as timing wise, it's a great time to repot some trees. Some trees, it's just starting to get into the time to repot. But if you look and see some people who are the best at bonsais, well, the bonsai masters who have these large bonsai gardens, and if you pay attention, you might see that a lot of times they tend to start a little early on their repotting because they are going to be repotting. They have so much of that to do sometimes that they may not be able to do all of their repotting in peak season. So what do you do then? Well, you break the rules and repot it if it really needs repotting. If it's an otherwise healthy tree and you run the risk of wrecking the health over not repotting it a month late is probably still better than not repotting it. That's kind of the thought process behind that. Otherwise, so if you have like umpteen pine trees, it might be time to go ahead and get started on that. Maybe not your biggest and your best prize pine trees if you're doing a serious repot, but maybe some of your younger stock and stuff when you know that you're going to be doing that way past what's repotting season. It might be time to start trying to get ahead of the game to knock some of that out now so that you're not going so much longer later. I know in the Bay Area right now, I'm just, the doors are open and I have a sweater on. It's probably all of mid 50s, and when the wind's not blowing, it's pleasantly so. So as far as our trees are concerned, they are starting to raise up. They're starting to get a little goosebumpy looking, and everything is just starting to wake up. So that's about what I have going on as far as time. It's a good time to plant. It's a good time to maybe dig up some of that dormant stuff that you would be tempted to dig up in the spring. Now is that time to do it. It's a good time to rehash our lessons. And it's a good time to start anything that's going to be a part of a two-part system, like my systemic disease and disease control. So yeah, that's our little spill on time. Not a big video. I just wanted to kind of hang out. We're back in it as far as the storms are coming. They'll be here about 3 this afternoon. We're kind of hanging out around 11 or 12 now. And the good news is I think this time next weekend, we'll be working our way out of this rain. We're starting to see a break in it, if those hold true. Fingers crossed. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. If you haven't already, I will probably drag a tree in tonight and we'll do a little something. It'll be the last night of my weekend. I did 2 yesterday. This is the first one of today. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. And thank you so very much for, watering. One other thing. With everything that's been going on today, I finally got to water some trees. This tree is high and dry enough from all of this that I was able to water this one. I was able to water my Dawn Redwood, and I was able to water those trees, which is to say that with all of our rain, you can still see kind of our line of where our water comes and goes. So it's a real positive to me that I was able to interject our own watering cycle back onto these trees because of the placement of them. But everybody's back in their high tide marks. Okay. Thank you so much for watching.